You really went on a pretty amazing run those first 5 years. We talk about a Stanley Cup, an all-star game. I think you're in a small club of 4 people in NHL history to have 53 goals, 207 penalty minutes. That's not something that happens to all players.
I was busy that year. At 23, we're standing on the blue line winning a Stanley Cup. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, like how many more of these am I going to win? We had a really special group. Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid. If you want to compete against those guys, well, you better do as much as you can do each and every day to have an opportunity to even compete against those guys. It's been a fun journey. We've learned a lot from you guys. You guys have learned from us. And I see the service we provide. It makes me very grateful that I was able to surround myself with such amazing people. I think that's what makes us such a great team.
Gary, thank you for being on the Impact Community Podcast today. I have such great memories of your first time in Impact Kitchen. You came in with Adrian and Sylvie, and this is about 10 years ago at our Corktown location. And they introduced you to me, and you went right into grilling me on where our food comes from, how we prepare it. And you had so many questions for me. I knew I was going to like you right away.
Or not.
Or not. But I think what sold the deal on our friendship and collaborative relationship is I sent over a platter of baked goods. Yeah. And I watched the table and I watched you try all of them. And a smile came on your face. Yeah. And I knew right then that we were solidified to work together someday.
So you realized early I was a sugar guy.
Yeah.
I got this guy. I know where his soft spot
as long as it's maple syrup, honey, coconut sugar, we were good.
As long as it's a good sweeteners in there, we're all good.
Yeah. So
10 years, It's been 10 years.
10 years, yeah. And then working together now for 6 years. So it's been an awesome ride and feels like we're just getting started.
Well, I keep saying, people say, do you miss playing? And I said, well, yeah, every morning I wake up, I think I can still play. And then I go play and I realize I can't. So, yeah.
Okay.
Time's flying by.
It's flying by. So, Gary, one of the things I respect most about you is you have a level of excellence about yourself and what you expect in other people as well. I'm curious if there's a story from your childhood that can speak to that standard and that excellence that you've brought to your life.
Well, I mean, I guess if I was talking about my childhood, I'd talk about watching my dad work, right? My dad was a worker. And if I could say I learned anything from anybody when it comes to work ethic and passion about what you're doing, I learned that from my father. And, I probably wasn't the most skilled guy that played the game. Well, we know I wasn't, but I think learning from him and I saw how hard he worked every day. I saw him week to week, cash his check, have a wallet full of money. By the end of the week, the next week, there's nothing left in the wallet. Replenish the wallet, take care of 4 kids, buy us equipment, buy us skates, buy us sticks. I had a pretty amazing childhood watching a father who worked and spent every cent he made on his family. So I think that's probably where I got my work ethic, and my passion for doing things right was watching my dad.
That's awesome. When you were growing up, other than hockey, did you play other sports or have any interests and passions as a kid as well?
Yeah, I mean, back then we played hockey in the winter, and then we stopped playing hockey. Now that's changed, and I understand why in certain situations it's changed, but we're still encouraging our players to take a break, right? And but I think about the other sports I played. I played soccer. I played soccer until I was 12, 13 years old. Trying out for rep teams, really fell in love with soccer. But then all my buddies I was playing hockey with started playing lacrosse. So then I started playing lacrosse and played lacrosse till I was literally drafted to the National Hockey League. I was playing in Whitby. I was playing junior lacrosse. So back then I thought we played more sports. And if I could use an example, Joe Newendike, I think, was an unbelievable athlete. Right? Hockey Hall of Famer, 50-goal scorer many times, was an unbelievable lacrosse player, unbelievable hockey player, unbelievable golfer, unbelievable basketball player, like just a great athlete. And I do believe that playing more sports than just your number one sport, in the end, makes you a better athlete. In the end, maybe gives you a little more joy, I think, to play the sport that you love. The worry for everybody is you become a one-sport athlete too soon. You don't develop other skills. If that sport doesn't work out for whatever reason, whether it's professional, whether it's education, how many people still are going to play that sport, right? Are you going to leave with a bad taste in your mouth? I think I was a better athlete because I played more sports. I played basketball at school, played volleyball at school. So I was very well versed in all that stuff. Not that I was great at all of them, but I thought being more involved in more sport and all team sports, by the way, which I think it really does teach you how to be a team player, how to work together, how to work through problem solving. I believe that helped me to where I ended up going.
Impact community, I hope you're enjoying this episode with Gary Roberts. One of Gary's all-time favorite menu items with Impact is our grainless granola. And as a thank you for watching this episode, we want to offer you a 50% discount using the promo code GARY50 when you use our loyalty app. Thank you. That's cool. This topic of specialization is prominent for me right now. As you know, I have a 12-year-old and 10-year-old. I'm curious how you think about this, because what I'm navigating through is the kids at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that are doing all the extra stuff are often the best players at this age. Mm-hmm. And so there's a cycle now where you have to it feels like you need to put your kid in the extra stuff to keep up with the kids that age. Like when you get a parent who calls your program up and wants you guys working full time with their 8-year-old, like how do you go about navigating that conversation?
Well, I really do try to encourage. I think there's a certain stage where you do need to become a one sport athlete. If hockey's your thing, by the time you're 13, 14 years old, like you've got to make that decision, I think, at that time. Up to that time, I'm the one that encourages families. Not that everybody can do rep. Like rep is, when even it's the same with if you want to be a soccer player, well, they make you play 12 months a year, right? You want to play hockey, well, now you got to play 12 months a year. But you don't always have to play rep to be part of other sports, right? And that's why, and when you think about our program, we're always throwing guys soccer balls, spike ball, basketball as part of their warm-ups. We might play ultimate frisbee one day on the field. We're trying to encourage the players to do other things other than just play hockey. Improve movement efficiency without skating, right? We always believe, and I truly believe, if you get faster on the ground, 99% of the time that you're going to transfer that onto the ice. So we encourage our players to try to stay off the ice for a period of time, realign, rebalance, whatever you want to call it, get their bodies healthy and get their bodies in a position that they can go back and train harder and then start to skate again. But I think it's really important that all athletes take some kind of break, not just physically, but mental break of playing the game. And for me, depending on when your season ends, I always like to encourage people, take 3 weeks. Our youth get bored pretty quick now, I find. Like they're either on their phones, they're not out playing street hockey. They're not out playing one-on-one basketball in the backyard. They're not playing soccer in a field with a buddy. Like they're just you don't see it as often. So I do believe our youth get bored quicker, and then they're back in the gym, which is good for us. But I am encouraging our young players to stay off the ice. Stay off the ice for a period of time, 4, 6 weeks, whatever that looks like, depending on when your season ends. Get your body healthy, get your body ready to train hard, and then you can reintroduce the skating as you've got a little bit of strength and balance behind you.
That's great advice. For you, when did you start to think that hockey could be a bigger part of your future and something that you really wanted to pursue?
Well, I would say that I was playing AA hockey in Whitby. Think about Joe Newdyke and I playing on the same team growing up. I had a scout come and watch me play a game in Bantam hockey, and I got called up to play for the Oshawa Legionnaires Junior B. So I was literally about to turn 16 years old before I really thought I ever had a chance to be a hockey player.
Wow.
I don't know if it was just so far-fetched that I didn't ever think of it. I'd always heard about the great teams in Toronto, whether it was, the young Nats were always a team, and us Whitby boys used to hear how great the young Nats and how great, I think at the time it was called the MTHL back then, how great that league was, but we weren't playing in it. We were playing double hockey in Whitby. So I didn't really think of myself as being a professional hockey player at the time. I went and played, I think, 18 games of junior B hockey. I was 15, playing against guys that were 18, 19, 20. And then a gentleman knocked on my door. His name's Rick Kern, who's still my agent today, which I don't really need an agent anymore. But he knocked on my door at 15 and said to my dad, he says, I think Gary's going to get drafted to the Ontario Hockey League.
Wow.
And my dad's like, really? So I was 16 years old, turned 16 in May, got drafted to the Ottawa 67s in the second round, and was still I was totally green, no idea what to expect, playing minor hockey in Whitby, and then all of a sudden kind of just went from there. I went off to play in September. I moved to Ottawa and started playing junior hockey for the 67s.
Well, I know in each of your seasons with the 67s, you had some pretty epic jumps in your productivity on the ice. At that time, what were your off seasons looking like? Was it playing lacrosse still, or were you starting to focus more on the off season to become a better hockey player?
Yeah, I would say not. I would say I played lacrosse all summer, and I thought, that's when things started to change, right? I was just a lacrosse player. I didn't lift weights. I remember we had the excellence program at school where I think we would do like some chin up holds, and we would do push ups to a timer or whatever we used to do for our little thing at school. But I never really off ice. I never did any off ice training. I didn't weight train. It wasn't until I really got to that summer, my dad started buying some stuff for me for my garage. Put a chin up bar in. So I was really just training out of my garage and playing lacrosse. But no real education on what strength training was or what I needed to do. I just assumed that lacrosse was going to keep me in shape to play junior hockey. And, obviously I was scrappy. That was, what I was brought up. I grew up in North Whitby, above the tracks, right? And usually if you lived above the tracks, you were scrappy. Okay, so, right. That's what I'll call it. All
right, I hear you.
So, but I would say that I never really thought about off-ice training until I got to Ottawa and started playing junior hockey, started having to fight in junior hockey early. That's what I did. I had to fight to earn a job. And I did that as a 16-year-old. I broke a thumb my first year of junior hockey. And then it kind of went on from there. I got an opportunity with the role that I played. I was prepared to be the first guy in the forecheck. I was prepared to get my centerman the puck. That was my role, and I felt like I did that well, and that it kind of enabled me to start to play with better players. So once I started playing with better players with the role that I played, then first of all I played more. I was willing to do the dirty work on the line, and then ended up having an opportunity to play with better players, which made me a better player, which in the end allowed me to enjoy some goal scoring and less fighting, which was fun for me.
Well, it paid off. 12th pick overall in the 84 draft. Pretty incredible. I read something that I thought was interesting, which I didn't know before, that you were called out in your first training camp for actually being out of shape. That's now sounds like it must have been a big moment for you, knowing what you do today.
Yeah, like a huge moment. I went to training camp, played lacrosse all summer, thought I was in pretty good shape. Went to Calgary as an asthmatic, never been in Calgary before. I had asthma. It wasn't really like I was medicated when I need to. Like I took an inhaler called Ventilin if I felt like I got a wheeze on my chest. So that was my medication. It wasn't like there was any plan, and had to do a 2-mile run. And thought, well, I can run. I'm a lacrosse player, and kind of battled asthma as a child. And at times when I got sick or cold, it would get worse. So I went on this 2-mile run and had an asthma attack on the 2-mile run. And then went into the gym, and the Calgary Flames at the time, they were way ahead of everybody else. They had a bunch of college guys in there that were in their early 20s that had finished playing 3-4 years of college. They were way ahead on the education on weightlifting. We were, at that time in the Calgary Flames organization, we were trying to compete against the Edmonton Oilers. And we definitely weren't as skilled as the Edmonton Oilers, but the only way the Calgary Flames felt they could compete with the Edmonton Oilers was to be in better shape. So when I walk in the weight room and I'm seeing guys with 35-pound plates hanging between their legs doing pull-ups and doing dips and I mean, they were training pretty hard. We had some pretty fit guys back then. You think about our team back then. We had some fit young college guys, and then some older players that had, the Lanny McDonalds of the world, Doug Risebroughs of the world, that were hard-nosed guys that took pretty good care of themselves. So when I went to Calgary, failed the run, mercifully failed the chin-up test. I did like 1.5 chin-ups.
Oh boy!
And and Badger Bob, although now I look back on Badger Bob and I thank him, at the time I didn't like the man very much when he said in front of, I think there were 70 players at training camp. He
Wow.
basically said in front of everybody, he said, our first round draft pick was the worst conditioned player at camp.
Wow. Well,
So he took a shot at me, and I always say, if you could have beamed me up at any time during my career and sent me somewhere, that would have been it. I was very embarrassed, and I would say I couldn't get out of Calgary fast enough.
Okay.
That training camp was a terrible experience for me. I also had players, because I was first round pick, a little raw. I lined up beside Lanny McDonald at a face-off. And I just watched Lanny play for the Leafs. He was like, one of my favorites. I was never really a Leaf fan growing up. I was a Guy Lafleur and number 10 fan for Montreal. But watching Lanny McDonald, all of a sudden, Lanny was beside me, and pucks drops, and I kind of let him go, and he takes the puck, goes down, rips one, scores. And then I still remember Jerry Blair, the head scout, and Jerry pulled me aside after that scrimmage, and he said, you just let Lanny McDonald have the puck and score. And I said, yeah, well, it's Lanny McDonald. And he says, you want to play in the National Hockey League? You got to take his job. Like, that's one of the guys you got to take his job to play. And it kind of hit me, right?
Yeah.
And then he said to me, remember, this is my job too. I drafted you. So two things for me that stand out as being, wow, this moment where I'm like, oh my God, like this is real work now. This isn't minor hockey. This isn't junior hockey. This is actually work. And I left the rink completely stressed out because I was, first of all, letting down the head scout that made a recommendation to Cliff Fletcher to draft me, and letting, guys look at me and go, well, that kid's never making it. He doesn't have it. And so I got challenged quite a bit that camp. I got challenged by now current friends today that were teammates, I won't mention their names, challenged me, told me I didn't have it, what it took to make it, and had a lot of challenges that year. So I would say it was a terrible experience, but probably why I'm sitting in this chair today.
Yeah, sounds like some incredible life lessons came out of that.
Incredible life lessons. I learned so much. I went back to Ottawa, and then I realized, okay, that's never happening to me again. Right? So I bought a chin-up bar and put it in doorways everywhere I went. Guys that know I went to skating camps, I'd have this chin-up bar, and I'd put it in the doorway. And every time I went through the door, I would do as many chin-ups as I could.
Nice.
And I'd put it up in hotel rooms. I'd put it up wherever I was, I'd have this chin-up bar. Because I knew next year, Badger Bob was going to walk around at every test with me. And so I started at that. I really started that. And for me at that time, I mean, the nutrition, which we're going to get into, wasn't a big part of that, right? It was playing hockey, working out, having fun, and making sure that I was better prepared for next training camp. Unfortunately, I went back to the next training camp, had a better training camp, and Badger Bob did come and watched all my exercises. And so that's really, that's where it started for me. I was either going to dig in, work harder, figure out where I had to go as far as strength and conditioning, or I wasn't going to play. It was pretty cut and dry. There was only one option for me.
Yeah, well, even just putting together some of the chronological order stuff, those lessons from your dad when you were young of how hard he worked, getting called out and challenged, seems like it was adding up, and you were forming who you were becoming as a man to, take those lessons and then begin to thrive in the next phase. And I know in '86 was your first official year, and you really went on a pretty amazing run those first 5 years playing. We talk about a Stanley Cup, an all-star game, And what I find is one of the most unique stat lines of all time is 53 goals, 207 penalty minutes, something that may never be done again. I think you're in a small club of 4 people in NHL history to have the 50 and the 200.
I was busy that year.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine in today's game happening. But take me through that next phase of, seeing some of the fruits of your labor pay off and getting some success quick into your career, which, we know that's not something that happens to all players.
Yeah, at 23, we're standing on the blue line winning a Stanley Cup. And I remember looking around and, Joe Newendijk was beside me. He's crying. I'm not really crying, but emotional. I'm like, wow, this is, although it was really hard, don't get me wrong, we were 23.
Yeah.
And I'm looking down the line. I see Lanny McDonald, who's 36, who's, 13 years older than us. He retired that year. Right. And so, and he looked really old back then. I always say, he looked really old back then. I always say when I turned 36, I hope I didn't look as old as Lanny McDonald looked when he was 36. But I was 23 years old. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, how many more of these am I going to win? You know what I mean? Because it was an incredible feeling. I knew we played team sports to win championships and to be part of something special. We had a really special group. We had a really and our culture and our leaders. And I think back and our management. I think back how Cliff Fletcher made everybody feel part of it. We've been together since. I was at a 40-year reunion for the Stanley Cup.
Oh, that's awesome.
A year, a couple of years ago now. I think back to, am I right? 40 years, maybe 35 years. Okay, I'm losing track. I was at the 40-year anniversary for Memorial Cup for Ottawa. Anyways, but I think about how close our group was. We got together, and we all went back in Calgary for the reunion. And within 5 minutes, it was like we were all back in the dressing room. Of course, talking about how great we used to be, but but how close knit the group was. And I think back to our leaders. I think back to Lanny and Doug Risebrough and Tim Hunter and Jim Poplinski, and you go down the line, Brad McCrimmon, Al McInnes, Joe Newendijk, Mike Vernon, Gary, I think about all those players that played on that team. Doug Gilmore, quite a few Hall of Famers in there. An amazing group of human beings, amazing group, and it all stems from having a great leader. And Cliff Fletcher was a great leader back then. He made you, whether you were the highest paid player or the lowest paid player, you felt part of it. And he made you feel part of it. And I think that's what brought the group together. And I recognize that's harder to do in today's game. But our culture was amazing. And I learned so much through that year. Lanny McDonald, as a veteran player, always made sure the young guys were okay. Always made sure, hey, Rob's new. What are we doing after practice? You guys good? We're going here, we're going there. Very inclusive. So I just think we had a really great group, and that was the biggest reason we won.
That's so cool.
So then you move on to that, right? And then I had some individual success after that. Started scoring more goals, fighting less, playing with good players. I think back to my line mates. I played with Joe Newendijk and Håkan Loob for quite a while. I played a little bit with Timmy Hunter and Lanny at times when we needed to get physical, but I really had an opportunity to play with good players. Then I went on to play with Joe Newendijk and Sergei Makarov for quite a few years. And Sergei Makarov, for me, was probably the greatest player to play the game. At that time, he was 30 years old. He came over, won Rookie of the Year, and he was a star. And I had an opportunity to play with him. And he made me a better player. Joe Newendijk made me a better player, right? I just got that opportunity to continue to play with good players, which in return made me a better player. So I was fortunate in that time between 20 and 25 to kind of establish myself as a power forward, but also had a bit of an offensive touch, so I could I got those opportunities to continue to play with better players and play bigger minutes.
What a journey. Now, only a few years later, you suffer a neck injury that led into kind of another phase of your career that I'm sure was extremely challenging physically. Maybe you could speak to that phase a little bit, and I'm also really interested in kind of the mental side of it, because I know you had reached Stanley Cup All-Star 50 goals, probably riding pretty high, and it kind of came crashing down.
Yeah.
What was that stage like for you?
that's an emotional part of my, my point in my career where everything's going great, great, great. I feel my body the way that I played and my lifestyle. Like, when we in our 20s playing pro hockey at that time, nutrition still wasn't a thing, right? So even 20 to 30 for me, I worked really hard. I made sure I was in fairly good shape. But I never had that nutrition support that I needed at that time to continue to play that physical game I played every day. I could feel my body starting to break down. And I was 27 years old. I was starting to have neck problems. Got hit from behind in Toronto one night. Lost the feeling in my arms for like quite a while. They had to take me off on a stretcher, take me to Wellesley Hospital, and had severe nerve damage in my neck. And that was the start of the end until I kind of reinvented myself at 30. But I started to lose my career because I started to lose muscle. I started to lose strength. I started to have atrophy and weakness in my right side. Then it went to my left side. And I was trying to battle through this. In 1994, I was playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. This all started in the early 90s, my neck stuff. By the playoffs in 1994, I couldn't hold my stick. I couldn't cut food with my right arm. I'd take my left arm and put my right arm on the knob of my stick after I got dressed to go on the ice and play.
Wow.
So I think about the place I was in. I remember seeing our doc at the time, and hey, like, life goes on and no hard feelings, but he said, yeah, you've got severe nerve damage, but you'll heal in the summer. You'll be fine. And I went back out there with a horse collar on and played in the 1994 playoffs, and I literally couldn't defend myself. I'd go in front of the net, and I still remember it was a friend of mine, Dana Merzen, cross-checking me from behind. He was a Calgary Flame, then he got traded to Vancouver. I thought, that's not really nice, Dana. I was getting cross-checked from behind. I was getting beat up, and I couldn't really defend myself because I had no strength in my right arm. I couldn't use my right arm. So that's where I went, like 1994. I mean, it was, we lost in triple overtime we lost, or overtime we lost to Pavel Bure scoring in overtime. And I would say it's the only time in my career I remember putting my head down on the bench, and I was grateful that I didn't have to have my equipment on the next day. Probably the only time in my career I actually didn't want to play hockey the next day is because I'd gone through so much and I was basically playing on fumes. And there was nothing worse than going out there knowing you couldn't defend yourself. I would just go to the front of the net and try to tip some pucks and try to have some impact on the game. But I couldn't really be physical. I couldn't really fight anything off. I was just kind of existing out there. It was a tough place mentally to be. So that was basically the start of, 2 neck surgeries over the next 8 months, trying to get the strength back in my arms, trying to rehab myself. And then I was able to come back for a short period of time. I started to feel better and probably came back too soon. The year I won the Bill Masterton Trophy, I came back, was having some pretty good success. I was so excited to play the game again. So thankful that I was back playing. But I took a hit in Chicago, against Chicago and Calgary one night. Kind of got squished by 2 guys and once again had the same issue, lost the feeling in both my arms. So I left the ice that night and I said, I'm done, I'm retiring. So I stopped playing at that, and that was going into playoffs that year in Calgary in 1994. And I didn't play, and then I retired at the NHL Awards in June that year. So that's June of 1996, I retired and, basically said, okay, I'm good. I got a little money in the bank, living in Calgary, got an amazing friend group, and thought I'd be okay. And then I wasn't.
So yeah, with that phase, retirement, when was that something clicked inside of you that you knew you wanted to come back? We'll talk about a mentor of mine, Charles Poliquin, who I know played a big role in you, and Mark Lindsay and some other people.
Yeah.
When did the itch come, or when did the conversations with those guys start around, maybe you could, come back if you made some dramatic changes in how you approached your body?
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have the people I had in my corner back then, but I was in Calgary. One thing I realized, when you're done playing, you're done playing. The phone's not ringing. August is fine because you're with your teammates. They're going back to play, but you're not. All of a sudden, September, October, I wasn't really feeling like I wanted to go to a game. I didn't want to go watch. My phone wasn't ringing, and I'm pretty lost, right? I'm like, shit, what am I going to do? Where am I going? I don't really know anything about hockey. And Wayne McBean is an ex-NHLer who was retired because of a bad wrist. And I started hanging out with Wayne, and we'd play some squash in the afternoons. He had a golf logoing company that we were doing some corporate work with some companies in in Calgary. And but we'd go have some wings and a couple beers in the afternoon and maybe play squash. And I did that for a while. Then I went, finally, I was missing the game terribly, missing that fact that not just missing the game, the routine of being a player, the dressing room, what the dressing room really means, and I never really talks about it, but just missing being with the guys every day and, joking around. And, I always say you can, what you say in the dressing room, you can never say in the general public, but back then, I mean, that's what I missed. I missed being in the routine of being a pro hockey player. So I was pretty lost. I was, finally went to a game in like early November and watched a period, and then half the game and had to leave. So I wasn't loving my lifestyle. I was, probably drinking. I was drinking too much, feeling sorry for myself, not having a lot of direction, and trying to figure out what the next step was for me. What was I going to do? Always thought at some point I'd get into coaching. Wasn't sure about that. So I just was, I was 30 years old, go from being at the prime of my NHL career to being done hockey. So pretty big extreme. And left that game thinking, I got to do something. And then I talked to a good buddy of mine who still I talk to all the time today. Lauren Goldenberg was my first strength coach in Ottawa that helped me get through those challenges of being out of shape as a teenager. And he said, hey, I talked to Dr. Mark Lindsay. He said, I think you should go see Dr. Michael Leahy, and he's in Colorado Springs in Denver area. He said he's a chiropractor. He's got this new active release technique, a new therapy for releasing adhesions. And I literally couldn't play 2 days of golf in a row. Right? I couldn't play golf. I was skinny, fat, I would call it, at the time, and not loving myself. And so I ended up hanging the phone up, and I remember saying, well, am I done or I'm not done? And it was kind of a moment for him, like, well, if I'm 30, I kept thinking to myself, where am I going to be when I'm 40, living this lifestyle? I didn't like what I was seeing, and I made a decision to go to Colorado Springs, and I spent 5 days with Dr. Michael Leahy in Colorado Springs, and he said, well, just do some ART for a couple of days, show you what we do. We'll try and release all the problems with your neck. Then we'll give you some neck strengthening, and we'll try and get you back on track. And I'm like, hey, I'm good, doc. So at the time, ART, so active release techniques, was a technique that was, if it didn't hurt, they didn't think it helped you, right? So it was more like really digging in, the arm going one way, apply pressure to the adhesion, release it this way. Or that, It was just very painful.
Yeah.
And I remember him literally had me in tears on this chiropractic table in Colorado Springs.
I can believe it.
For days, like belted down, stripping my whole upper body with ART. From under my arms, my shoulders, my neck, my back. Probably three straight days of this, I was pretty beat up. Like I was sore. I was maybe moving better, but I was sore. We started doing some iso work on my neck. We started talking about where I was going to go after I left Colorado. And Dr. Leahy looked at me and he said, hey, listen, he said, you've made huge gains in 5 days. He said, if I were you, I would go back to Calgary. He said, Charles Poliquin, strength coach, was just here. He got certified in ART. And I know he lives in Calgary and he deals with Olympic athletes in the wintertime. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So I called my buddy Lauren Goldenberg, thanked him for encouraging me to follow through Mark Lindsay on to Dr. Leahy. And I remember talking to Lauren and I said, okay, I'm going to go back to Calgary and I'm going to call this Charles Poliquin guy. He's like, Charles Poliquin? I said, you're calling Charles Poliquin? I said, yeah. He says, I went to school with Charles. He said, I went on to working in the NHL, and he went on to getting way smarter. You know what I mean? Because back then, when you get a job in the NHL, it's like your education stops. You've got the ultimate job, you're in the NHL. Well, Charles Poliquin just went on, continued to study. He was amazing. So I went to see Charles, and he was not nice. Charles was not nice. The first thing he said to me was, "I've seen bigger arms on a chair." I think it was the very first thing he said to me when I said, "Hey, can you help me?" And that was his response when he looked at me. So that was the way our relationship started. But what he did for me in a short period of time was incredible. And, I have a friend that could second it. Marshall Toner was a really great friend of mine who was a Calgary Stampeder football player at the time. And I was getting so strong during this program, and I was like 4 weeks in, I was training, I was feeling way better. And I remember calling Marshall and saying, "Hey, I want you to do the next phase with me." And I remember asking Charles Poliquin, I said, "Hey, can I bring a friend?" He's like, "No." I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, he's not paying for the program, you are." And I said, "I know, Charles, but I need a workout partner. You're not very friendly." Yeah. And he's like, all right, but if he shares the program, I'll kill you," he said to me. So he was really big on, well, Charles was big on, listen, you're paying for this program. This is for you. It's your edge. Don't share it. And that was his philosophy. If they want it, let them pay for it. And it was a good lesson for me.
Yeah.
I still had Marshall come and train, but Marshall was I remember we were shaving one day at Lindsay Park in Calgary, and we were getting big. And I was getting fit, and I was feeling pretty good about myself considering where I was. And I remember trying to shave. I couldn't shave because my arms were too big. I said, unfortunately, this guy, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stick handle when I'm done with this guy, but I'm sure going to look good, But that's kind of the evolution of how things started and how me reinventing myself basically to try to come back and play. And at the time, I'll be honest, I was just grateful I was getting healthy. And that's when the nutrition started for me. That's when Charles basically said, okay, this is when you eat, this is when you train, this is when you eat, this is when you sleep, this is when you eat. It was literally like he would write it down for me. And I followed it to a T for almost, I'd say November of 96 till September of 97. I did not leave his side. He was with me the whole time. And I was starting to do 2-a-days. I was starting in Lindsay Park one day. I remember I still have chills the day thinking about it. I got down from a pull-up bar. I had like 55 pounds between my feet doing pull-ups. My neck was good. My body was feeling good. And he looked at me, he said, "You're going to play again."
Wow.
And, still emotional for me.
Yeah, that's so great. Just hearing you talk, I think about the word resilience. And I'm curious, for you, what does that mean?
Resilience, gosh, I don't know. I would say that what it means is just being determined not to be denied. I think is just like having the will to fight through whatever adversity is kind of handed your way. No one goes straight to the top.
Yeah.
I say it all the time. No one. There's always challenges. I'm not the only guy, first guy, last guy to have challenges to play professional sports. But that resilience is what you build over time. It's all the scars and, fighting through all that, the adversity, the injuries, the scoring slumps, the stressful nights, not sleeping because you're not scoring or not sleeping because you got the biggest game of your life the next day against a really tough opponent. Like all this stuff, I hate to see players get injured. I do. And I think the message I always say, we've all been there. You're going to get through it and you're going to be stronger on the other side. And that's what resilience is. It's time, it's life lessons, it's, the trials and tribulations of trying stuff that works, doesn't work. It's just all these things you do. The game does crazy things to you,
Yeah.
from being superstitious to being an overworker. Like, there's a lot of things you deal with mentally to get yourself through days, and having a good support team around you, and at the time for me, I owe those people everything. They helped me a great deal with a time in my life that was very stressful.
When you talk about resilience there, I think you were referencing an athlete, but it sounds the same for just about anybody, the way they should think about resilience. I'm thinking about entrepreneurship, founders, parents, exactly what you're saying. There's no easy road. There's ups and downs, behind the scenes for everybody. There's challenges that we don't know about. And it's just keep going to the next step, one small step at a time. But that's what I was thinking while you were talking that. So it was a great answer.
Yeah, just no shortcuts to success.
No.
There really isn't. And you can have short-term success because you're at a window of opportunity in your life where you're young enough to kind of deal with anything that's thrown your way. But that's a really short window.
Yeah.
If you want to have a chance at longevity and long-term success, there has to be a plan in place.
A fun Charles story. So when I was coming up in personal training, strength and conditioning, and would do all his seminars and courses, and not the nicest guy, really intimidating. When you were called out for in training camp, he would call out students that weren't prepared, and basically have them in front of the group and make them look bad. So I never really could say I liked him either. But later on, when we opened Coretown Impact, he found out that a former student had opened this, and it was a little different path than people that had taken his courses before. And when he was in Toronto, we would always have lunch together, and I got to know a totally different side of him, to where it was comfortable and not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Which I thought was special in the way I remember him. As people may not know, he's passed on.
Like,
a few
I want
years
to be
ago
clear,
now.
But
really special guy.
I talk about him not being a nice guy to me early on, but I'll tell you what, he spent every day with me for 12 months.
Yeah.
I talked to him every week for the next decade. He changed my life.
Yeah.
So I have nothing but respect and admiration for what he did, and I miss him.
So you spend this time with Charles and others getting you back, and ultimately, that moment on the pull-up bar, he says you can play again, and you did. You came back and had 13 more seasons in the NHL. When you think back to that, did you ever from not expecting it to expecting it? What was that next phase of your career? A longer phase, actually, those 13 years.
Yeah, I always think about the people that helped me make that happen. And I remember being on a plane with Trevor Kidd. I got traded to the Carolina Hurricanes because Calgary wasn't prepared to take the risk to pay back the insurance money and to give me a qualifying offer at the time. And Al Coates, still a great friend of mine. He called me and said, "Rob, I'm sorry, we're going to move you. We just, although you look healthy and you've done your work and you passed all the tests, we just, our doctors just don't think you're going to have the ability to play for any amount of time." So I went to Carolina and I did the physical, passed the physical. The doctor looked at Jimmy Rutherford and said, "Hey, Gary's done his work. He looks great. He's passed all the tests, but when I look at his MRI, I really don't think he's going to have an opportunity to play for very long." And I can remember that day for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I just did all this work for a whole year, and I'm not going to be able to find a team to go on. And Jim Rutherford, I still thank him today. He looked at me and he said, "I'm prepared to take the risk if you are."
Wow.
So I said, "Jimmy, I'm prepared to take the risk." So I signed a 3-year contract that day with the Carolina Hurricanes. And that was really, my reintroduction into the National Hockey League. If it wasn't for that and for Jimmy taking a chance on me, I might have eventually found a team, but at the time there wasn't a lot of takers because I don't think people really thought I was going to have an opportunity to play for any length of time. So yeah, very appreciative of that relationship, and still am today.
And you had a few more stops, obviously some epic years in Toronto, and ultimately you concluded your career with Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
And now we get to another massive transition in someone's life of being now a professional athlete for 20 plus years in the NHL, transitioning to a post career. At that stage, did you know that strength and conditioning, nutrition, performance was going to be your future, or kind of how did you go into that real retirement phase and post career transition at this stage?
Yeah, like I definitely knew I was going to be better prepared this time. That's for sure. I had a gym in Toronto when I was a Toronto Maple Leaf, and it was called Station 7, and it was amazing when I was a Leaf. But then when I ended up, not signing that year in 2005, after the lockout year, I ended up signing with Florida and not in Toronto. The gym kind of was tougher to manage for me, obviously, and not being here, it was a lot different. So I ended up closing that gym down. But I always knew that, I made a comeback in the National Hockey League because of what I did off the ice. And I was one thing about going to school with Charles Poliquin for a year, you learn a lot. So I learned a great deal that year from Charles when it comes to training, nutrition, recovery. He was way ahead of the game. So I basically felt like I took a crash course in strength and conditioning at 30. And players that know me, I offer that often for the next 13 years of my career. I was always yelling at guys.
I heard there's some stories of you bringing blenders on planes.
I would say that.
Supplements.
I was bringing blenders on planes. I was making shakes in the back of airplanes. I was. Charles had got to me. He had convinced me, and it's easy to say, hard to do. If you take better care of yourself, you eat better, you sleep better, you're going to play better, you're going to play longer. And he convinced me of that at 30. So, not saying you can't go have fun, but you like we say, you got to judge your fun meter. You're going to be a pro athlete, you're going to be a pro hockey player, but then you got to dig in and put some work in to do that. And he convinced me of that, and I tried to relay that. I'm sure I became, preaching a little too much probably at times, guys would say. I always tried to be a good teammate. I always tried to encourage players to get in the gym, do their work. And guys that played with me know that. And I was true to my word that way. I was in the gym training. And anybody that came in, I was more than willing to help, and always making recommendations on nutrition for guys and plane rides, and used to yell at guys for having too many desserts on the planes. But things started to get good in the National Hockey League. We're flying on charter planes. Like my first 10 years in the NHL, we're flying on commercial airlines. We're eating commercial airline food. All of a sudden we're on charter planes in my mid-30s with 3 dessert trays going up and down the aisle. Guys enjoying a little too much sugar. So I used to be hard on some guys, but I knew that at some point I would, that would be an area that I would probably be involved in. I got remarried late in my career. So I would say I was very selfish, and, my first marriage, for 20 years, basically, I played pro hockey, 17 of those. I made a choice to be less selfish, because to be a pro hockey player and to be great every day at your game, you've got to have a really great partner by your side that's willing to put up with you, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for your spouse and your girlfriend, and it's a lot of work to be great at hockey. It's a lot of work to be any professional athlete. You need to put a lot of time in, so you need that support on the other side of it. I made a choice to stay home, and it kind of fell in my lap. Like Rick Tocchet called me that summer. I'd retired, and I remember Rick Tocchet calling me and saying, "Hey, why don't you train Stamkos in your," Rick was my last coach in Tampa, and Stamkos and I were teammates that whole year. And one of the biggest reasons I went down to Tampa was to have an opportunity to work with Steven for the whole winter, and built a relationship with Stammer, and And he was in Markham. I was in Uxbridge. We moved into a new house in Uxbridge. I was retired from playing, and Rick Talkie said, "Why don't you train Stammer? You know, the organization wants to send him to Minnesota to train for the summer and stick him in a hotel room." And so I went in and talked to Michelle, and I said, "What do you think about have Stammer come to the house every day, and we'll just train him here?" So that's really where it all started. Stammer came that summer. He just turned 19, played 1 year in the National Hockey League. We had kind of trained together throughout the winter time. That was part of the deal there. I was actually training him in the dressing room. He'd meet me early in the mornings. We'd do strength training before practice. And at the time, Barry Melrose came out publicly and said, this Stamkos boy needs to go back to junior hockey. He's not ready to play yet.
Some parallels maybe to when you were coming up, eh?
Yeah. So at Christmas time, Stephen had 3 months of strength training with me and with our strength coach in Tampa at the time, and I think he went on to score 20 goals the second half of the season.
Nice.
So thankfully, I never sent him back to junior, but we started to build that relationship, and I still am very thankful for that opportunity to work with a young player and then bring him into my home. And the rest, I guess, is history. We trained that whole summer together, and I had Lauren Goldenberg come in at the time, who's been my longtime strength coach, to come in and give me some advice to help me program Stammer that summer. And both of us programmed him, and I trained him every day. And then he went back to Tampa, and I stayed retired. At the time, I thought, gosh, I'm in pretty good shape because I was still training. And I remember telling Michelle one day, I'm like, I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go get a PTO. I'm going to go try and play somewhere. And then the next day, it literally felt like the next day, I tore my quad doing a split squat with Stammer.
Oh no!
And I remember hurting myself, and he was getting strong and fit, and I was trying to keep up to him, and I hurt myself. And I walked back in the kitchen. And I said, "Well, honey, I guess I'm just going to be a strength coach." So that's kind of how the next. The next version of what I decided to do, and got into strength and conditioning and helping young players, be the best versions of themselves and get into strength and conditioning. And the nutrition by that time was a huge part of my life.
Now, a little known fact about you, what I find interesting and what I respect a lot is, I know the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, recovery, are all things that I think people would attribute to your name. But what I don't know if people attribute to your name is you have a passion for hospitality. And what I mean by that is, I've found it really interesting getting to chat with you many a times of how you think about your player's journey coming into your facility. And I was surprised of the detail that you would get into it with me of when they walk in the door, where they're going, when they walk, upstairs to the lounge, how you want the food presented, mm-hmm. the smoothies ready after their workout, some of the healthier granolas and protein cookies available at this time, presented this way. And it was just really no stone unturned, and it really was reminiscent of how I speak about impact in our customer journey. You seem to have really created a player journey within your environment, and it goes mm-hmm. to your staff as well now. Was that a conscious decision, or how do you think hospitality while you're setting up your program, or how do you think about the journey of your players?
Well, when you think about hospitality, and I think about the evolution of nutrition in general and the impact it's had on professional sports, and I would be honest, I think hockey's probably down the totem pole of pro sports that have kind of figured it out. It wasn't really part of an NHL guy's journey, nutrition. But I would say, I started working in Pittsburgh, and we started hiring chefs, and we started having food daily at the rinks. And I just saw how much the players enjoyed that time together. Like, it's a moment where players come in the dressing room, and now breakfast is served. So you're not having breakfast at home, or you're a young guy in the hotel, a lot of guys, right? So all of a sudden you have that togetherness in the mornings where players they're eating together. And there's something about spending more time together is what I look at. And I thought back to, those times in Pittsburgh and how much fun the guys had at team meals, and I mean, you'll talk to any retired guy, they miss afternoon naps and team meals, because that's where they really get to know each other.
Yeah.
So I think, I always felt like, when I see the players are like, hey, what's for lunch today? And I'm like, we're having tuna poke bowls today. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Can't wait. You know what I mean? Like, the food's become a huge topic in our facility. You hear the guys talking all the time. Wow, did you have breakfast today? Was it amazing? It's just the culture I've tried to create is in an environment where everybody feels comfortable. You don't have to be a professional athlete in my facility, in our facility to feel comfortable. And I want everybody to come into our eatery. That's kind of our gathering space. And it's a space where everybody feels up for what's next ahead, right? And, I'm a big fan of supporting your workouts. Every day, consistently supporting your workouts with good fuel. And sounds complicated, maybe. But you see us, like I always say, our facility, it's kind of like, controlled chaos, There always seems like there's chaos around. It's always like, maybe if you didn't know better, it was like, oh gosh, it's a circus around here, like guys, guys kid around about wherever I am, it's usually a circus, right? Or there's usually chaos. But I think that culture that we've created and that time where players have an opportunity to sit and enjoy great food and have an amazing workout, get treatment, go for on ice, do some more treatment. That whole experience of being in our facility, it's a one-stop shop, provide everything for the players to be the best they can be. And in an environment that's friendly, supportive, like no one's yelling at you. Like we don't have to yell at people to do the work. Like we have very motivated athletes in our facility. They know why they're there. They wouldn't be there if they weren't there for the right reasons. But they're all driven to chase the next guy, to chase the next job. And I think anybody that comes into our space, I want them to leave with that feeling like, wow, what an experience that was today. And the eatery, I put a lot of time in, and my wife and Sylvie, a lot of time into designing the eatery in our facility. And we knew it was going to be a place that people would be happy when they were there. And that's what it's turned out to be. I look around and I just watch our players. We might have 8 young players here, 8 pros here, some executives over here. Everybody's minding their business, enjoying great food and getting better, and makes me happy.
It is a unique and special environment that I agree completely. It might feel like controlled chaos, but I can tell because I've talked to you so many times, it's a curated chaos that flows well and works. Yeah. You become legendary in the impact lore of our team of these tastings that we do every year, and it's become something that I personally look forward to, for the last 5-6 years now, of leading up to the season. We just finished one, bringing you, Sylvie, other team members in for a tasting for the upcoming food, and the attention to detail, the volume of food eaten is something that we look forward to. And how has
I actually have to fast before I come see you now. Sylvie has to warn me, okay, we're going to Impact on Wednesday for food tasting. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I'm not going to eat for 2 days.
Yeah, you'll never live down. One year, the first item that came up was the waffles, and you ate the entire portion. And I think we had about 8 more servings after that. You got through it.
I got through it.
But you'll never live that one down.
No, but it's definitely, we look forward to it too. And I think that's, for me, the message to our players is like you guys just don't throw a menu out there and, hey, okay, sounds good. There's a lot on Sylvie's part, on your staff's part, there's a lot of effort that goes into designing a 12-week food program for, 150 hockey players. It isn't just, just doesn't happen. We are trying to make sure everybody gets the right caloric intake for each meal. We're trying to make sure they get the right macros, micros. Are they doing energy system work that day? Then they need a higher base carbohydrate meal. Are they doing more strength training? Well, then we need a little more protein. Like there's all these things that go in. Well, we can't have too much of this meat. We've got to make sure we get all the, Although I like steak and a lot of guys love steak, you can't have steak every meal. But there's a lot of thought put into the menu, which I appreciate. The collaboration amongst your staff and our staff is what made it more enjoyable. And I think we've come up with some really creative new meals. I'll take total credit for the tuna poke bowl you have on your menu right now.
Well, yeah, some of them have been up on our menu. We'll take those wins.
Yeah, no, but I mean, for us to come with you with some recommendations, and for your staff to be as gracious and patient as they are with trying to provide with the new flavors and new options for our players. It's been a fun journey. It's been fun. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot from you guys. You guys have learned from us. I think that's what makes us such a great team. And we both strive. We're both we prepare. We prepare. We're passionate. We're all those things you can talk about. Like I always say, like, preparation became my passion. Like, I wanted to stand on the blue line before every game, and I wanted to know that I did everything I could to feel the best I could feel at that moment. And I still think about it. I still think about standing on the blue line thinking, I'm ready to play tonight. Like, let's get after it. And there's nothing worse than, they say it's tough to write the test if you don't study. Right?
Absolutely.
And doing your work behind the scenes, eating good food, sleeping, drinking water, all these things you have to do to be great at professional sports or great at hockey. That's all on your own. Mm-hmm. And that's where it really gets to the point where you've got to be disciplined and you've got to be committed. And if you want to play against the best, then you've got to do everything you can. None of us, are going to match, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid. No one's matching their skills, right? But if you want to compete against those guys, even compete in the same arena as those guys, well, you better do as much as you can do and as close to what they do each and every day to have an opportunity to even compete against those guys.
Absolutely. And, you say preparation, again, professional athlete, entrepreneur, parent. I just gave my son a preparation lecture yesterday about his schoolwork. It applies to everything. Preparation, it works for all different worlds. It's the message to hear.
Yeah, and it's pretty tough. Like, that brain runs out of glycogen pretty fast. So if you're not fueling properly as a young, younger boy or a younger athlete, you run out of fuel pretty quickly. And I think as parents, I always say to all my parents, like, give your son, give your daughter, give them a chance to be good. Give them a chance. Control what they're eating before the game. Control what they're having when the game's over. Like, have healthy options for them. You have, I've seen it where the parents yelling at the player on a Sunday, they've played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the player's got no energy, but I've seen what the player's eaten all weekend. And as nice as I can say is, well, Johnny has no energy because this is what he ate this weekend. Now it's Sunday. Like, you just can't keep going to the well. And yeah, I get we're all in tough situations. I do. But being prepared, leaving the house with snacks, leaving with, I always say, we always talk about the tournament cooler, having healthy snacks for your kids is going to give them an opportunity to at least play their best. And whatever happens, happens. But you as a parent can say, okay, I did my best to provide the fuel I needed for my child to play his best. Didn't work out, that's fine. But you don't want to be the parent that says, gosh, I fed my kid crap all weekend. What do I expect of my kid by Sunday? He's played 7 games in 3 days. And he's lived on average,
That's the tournament.
That's the tournament cooler. That's what I'm a big fan.
Cooler,
it's all about preparation. It's all passion to prepare, And the end result, well, at least you're going to feel good about the end result. And I say that, like, being prepared for me, it became mandatory. And like I say, it in order for me to do it as a pro athlete at 39, 40, 41, into my 40s nationally, I had to be selfish. You had to be selfish with your time to play that long. And then you need to have the support around you, which I did at the time, and tried to play as long as I could because I was passionate about preparing to play.
Okay, Gary, next section here is we have our impact community rapid fire questions. So we've reached out to our community. They've sent in questions.
Not one question I've answered today is rapid fire. So this is going to be
this is gonna be challenging.
It's going to be challenging for me.
So
okay.
Are you ready?
Hold on.
Okay. Your favorite recovery modality?
Acupuncture.
Okay. Burgers or pizza?
Burgers.
Are you and Chris Draper friends?
Yes.
Okay, I have to say, for those who don't know, Gary and Chris Draper almost got in a fight in an alumni game, which I don't think has ever happened either. But
neither one of us.
Pretty fun
I don't
moment.
know. Neither one of us have been invited back, so I don't know. Maybe that was a telling tale, but we're all good, buddy.
Okay.
We're all good.
All right. Your favorite lift in the gym?
Glute ham raise.
Oh, never heard that answer before on this. Okay, what's a little known fact about you?
Little known fact about me. Gosh, that's not going to be quick.
Oh, you can go on here.
I like a really good tequila.
All right, this is a controversial answer here.
Controversial answer.
All right.
A little.
Okay,
They say it's
okay.
good for you. Isn't tequila good for you?
Hey, if you high
Little
quality,
bit.
high quality.
I like a nice little sipper once in a while.
Okay.
I'll give you that.
All right. What excites you most about what you're doing right now?
Giving back to a game that gave me everything.
Nice. Your favorite Impact Kitchen menu item?
I already said it. Tuna poke
Oh,
bowl.
nice. All right. The fittest player you've seen, past or present? Not you included.
Ooh. I'll go back as far as Gary Suter.
Oh, okay.
Played with him in Calgary. One of the fittest players I ever played with, and that's an old boy who was very fit at a time when not all were. And then a more recent player I played with I'd probably say Rod Brindamore.
All right. Okay, last question. Who's winning the cup this year?
Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay. All right.
I'm a Rod Brindamore fan right now.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. So Gary, we know building culture, whether it's in a team environment, a business environment, a family environment, is so important to the outcome.
Yeah.
How have you thought about building culture from playing days to now building a business and having a team? What's your philosophy around that?
Well, I think the philosophy is to be very careful in your hiring. I really wanted to. I talk about having the team behind the team when I played. I really did know in order to continue to grow Gary Roberts' performance, I was going to have to build a team. And I would say that I've been very fortunate. I have Adrian and Sylvie, and you go down the list of, Adrian and Sylvie would been with me a long time. They've had a huge impact on building Gary Roberts' performance. And then Adrian's done an amazing job helping to manage and along with me, hire strength coaches. We have strength coaches that have been with us for almost a decade. So, being consistent in our messaging, I'm direct, fairly direct, but I'm fair and honest. And I think trying to be that on a regular basis with my team and develop that culture that I really believe that when players come into our facility and if they look around and they see dysfunction or if they see, relationships that don't seem strong, it just creates uncomfortableness for everybody. And I've really tried to make sure, you run your business, it's not always it's not always running like you want it. There's always little things you want to change and get better. I would say the team we've built and the players we have. Like I look at our team, and when you want to relate it to hockey players, we have 6-7 stars in our business, in our company, and that drives our culture. Mm-hmm. Them being consistent every day, them. I watch them interact with our staff. I watch our top people interact with clients. And such a great feeling for me to see that I don't have to be everywhere. I don't have to be here every day. Between Adrian and Sylvie and Brian and Lucas and Hugo and Liam, Mateo, I think about all our strength coaches. Like, I love our team and I love our culture. And that's what drives me every day. I want to be there. I want to be part of it. I probably don't have to be as big a part of it as I used to. But I certainly walk in and I smile when I see our team interact with each other and interact with their clients. And I see the service we provide. And it makes me very grateful and thankful that I was able to surround myself with such amazing people. And I see what we're doing for young players. I see what we're doing for older players. And I just, I literally couldn't have dreamed it any better than what it is right now for our business and and the success that everybody inside our company is having. And I'm truly grateful.
Well, that's great. Well, it starts with leadership, and I know from knowing your team so well, how they feel about you and the leader you are as the leader. I'm curious, we've talked a lot about standards and excellence today. If you could take us through a quick day in the life of Gary Roberts and how you lead your life personally so that you can show up and be the leader, be the example and the role model to your team and still to this day to the athletes that come in. I know they look to you as well.
Talk about life now, life after when you retire, then it becomes all about everybody else and not yourself. So, I'm like everybody else that's an entrepreneur or, runs a business, has a job. To find time for yourself is tough. And I try to give myself an hour a day that I do either some type of strength training, some type of cardio, where I can just put my phone away, put some music on, and try to just be present in trying to keep my own body healthy. And I think we try to provide that for all our staff members. You work hard, but you have your time to do your work as well. I think it keeps everybody healthy, keeps everybody motivated to work. So I try to get something done early in the morning. Try to spend that hour myself. I find as you get older, I'm gonna be 60 in May, so I'm not really producing testosterone like I used to. So by 2 or 3 o'clock, if I haven't got something done, it's not happening. So I like to get something done early in the morning. We still play a little shinny. I've had a shoulder injury this winter that I've been rehabbing, so I've played less hockey. But I try to spend that hour a day on myself. And if I get to do it at the gym, great. I am training some executive groups too, which I really have enjoyed this winter, is actually doing some coaching over the winter time that I haven't done in the past. But being in our environment, it's pretty easy to find some equipment to work on. I know that much. So I'm not really chasing a gym, which is nice. I have a gym at my house, and I have a gym at our facility, obviously, that I use. But I would say, it's important. It's important for me to still, I'm far from playing, but I always say I try to stay close. I try to stay fit enough that I can still go out and do the things I like to do, and try to practice what I preach, and try to, I have my fun days too, and my cheat days too.
Nice. I love the mindset. You recently opened up a beautiful new facility, world class in every sense of the way. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I always, I knew at some point I was going to have to, either get bigger and grow or move along. I think through this time of building our team behind the scenes, it became more clear that we had the team, if we were willing to stay together, if we had the team, that we could do something bigger. And we've been doing this for, this is 16 years for me since I've retired from playing. Feels like yesterday. It amazes me that I'm sitting here and I've almost been in this industry as long as I played in the National Hockey League. And it actually shocks me that we're this far. I have a 16-year-old girl, soon to be 16, soon to be 17-year-old boy, 20-year-old boy at home. I started with this new career, and they were tiny, and Sydney wasn't even born in 2010. So for me, I would say that in 5 years, I'd like to be in a position where I'm less busy. But there's a fine line, and you probably feel this, like I need to challenge this thing every day, so I need to be busy enough to do that. And I need to have something that challenges me every day to continue to live the way that I live. Like I believe you need to look the part. If you're going to sell it, you better look like you know what you're doing. You better look like you know that you take care of yourself. And like I say, I'm far from playing, and I've said at times I battle it too. I don't burn saturated fat like I used to. I battle. Okay, I put on a few lbs this couple of weeks. I got to reel her back in. So I'm no different than everybody else. We all have that challenge. We all totally have 100% control of what we put in our mouths every day. But stress, family, schedules are all factors in how you fuel your body. And like I talk about being prepared, having extra snacks, I find snacking for me saves me. I'm going to be here with you. I've got your nice, beautiful snack pack that you always give me. I'm going to walk away from here and probably have a little bit of your granola, because I can eat the granola dry in the car as a snack, and I don't have to worry about stopping for anything. So I do my best to practice what I preach, live a certain way that I think I need to have enough energy to do what I do. And I'd like to be busy. But in 5 years, hopefully I'm less busy and still loving what I'm doing.
All right, that sounds like a plan. Gary, you're a man who lives by passion and purpose. You're inspiring to me. I know you'll be inspiring to the entire impact community. Thank you for being on our podcast today.
I appreciate everything you guys have done for us. We're an amazing team. So thank you to you and your staff, Josh.
Thank you.